Good morning. So I'm recording in a different location this time. I'm recording in my office. I've been trying to block out all the mess in here because it's a tip. So these boxes behind me are full of yarn from the YarnAddict shop. You can see my essential oils there. I've got essential oils diffusing while I'm recording, and I've got a pile of knitting and things to show you on my desk. The rest of my office is a complete and utter disaster, and in fact I'm in the middle of having a big clear out. So there is loads of yarn and fibre. A lot of it's sold already, but there is still some left in the YarnAddict Online Shop. I will be adding some fabric later this week because I'm having a clear out of my fabric stash as well. I'm trying to get rid of one whole shelving unit. I got this big industrial shelving unit along the wall in front of me to the right of the camera, and I want to try and get rid of one of them so I can get my knitting machine up and running again. So that's why I'm having a big clear out, and I'm being really ruthless. I've also got some books to come later this week. Okay, so let's get into today's episode. I do have some notes to help me along, so I do apologise if I look at my notes a little bit. But I want to welcome you to episode 2. I'm thrilled that this time I didn't stop on episode 1. I did share last week how I did decide to start a podcast 2 years ago, and I recorded episode 1 and then I never did anymore. So we are now on episode 2, which is exciting. So my name is Anniken Allis. I design knitting patterns and teach knitting workshops. I live in the UK in the southwest of England in Cornwall, but if you notice an accent, that's because I'm actually from Norway. I've lived in the UK since I was 20 years old, which is a long time. I'm married. I have 2 girls who are in their 20s now, so adults basically. Thank you if you watched last week. Thank you to the new subscribers we've had since last week. I'm excited that you're here. If this is your first episode, then welcome. I'm hoping to make this a weekly thing, at least over the summer, and then we'll see what happens when we go into the autumn, because autumn is really busy. So this week, I've got a stash acquisition to show you. I've actually bought something this week. I've got a giveaway, details at the end of the episode, and then I have want to share what's on my needles, plans for August. I want to talk about taking knitting on holiday, and my top tips for taking knitting on your holiday. School holidays have just started in the UK, I think this weekend. I kind of lost track of when school holidays are after my kids left school, but I think it started this weekend. I've got a new cast on to show you, and yeah, that's about it. So let's get started. So let's start with the stash acquisitions. Now, where did I put it? Oh, there we go. So this is actually from a local company. She's actually based just less than half an hour from where I live, and she is called Demelza's Delights. So I'll put her website below, but it's demelsasdelights.co.uk, and I'll put her details below. So this is what I got. It's beautiful colors in this one. It's sock yarn. It's let me see what it is. It is 70% superwash merino, 20% yak, and 10% nylon, and there's 400 meters. It's really soft. I've had this blend before from other dyers, but I haven't actually knitted socks with it, and I'm actually thinking about knitting socks with this because the colors are quite bold. It won't look very good in a lace pattern, but so I'm thinking about doing socks. I might save this when I go on holiday at the end of August, and use this as one of my sock projects on holiday. But I love the colours in it. It's called Bodmin Moor in the rain. It rains a lot on Bodmin Moor. So Bodmin Moor is actually about 10 minutes from where I live. We're right on the edge of Bodmin Moor. And when I first moved here in 1990, I was actually teaching at a riding stables on Bodmin Moor. So that's why this colourway kind of spoke to me, because it has a lot of memories. My husband grew up on the edge of Bodmin Moor, and it's somewhere we spent a lot of time as a family over the years. So I was quite excited about this. I do like this. It comes with a little tiny stitch marker. Let's see if I can show you this. I kind of kept it on here so I wouldn't lose it. A little tiny stitch marker of a Cornish pasty. You see that? It's a Cornish pasty, which if you haven't had a proper Cornish pasty, you missed that. They're delicious. And then it also came with 2 Cornish tea bags. I don't actually drink tea. I don't like tea at all, or coffee. But my daughter says that the Cornish tea trading company Smuggler's Brew, there's a bit of a smuggling history tradition in Cornwall. So my daughter likes these, so I might actually give these to her. So, but I've kept them in the bag with the yarn till I recorded this, so I would remember to share it. So it came in a bag like that. It also came with a bag of Skittles, but I ate those because I like those. So that's that'll be going on my needles when we go on holiday, I think. We're not going on holiday for another month, and I've already started lining up what I'm taking with me. Right, so that's the stash acquisition. I will actually have some more stash acquisitions next week because I ordered something this weekend, but it probably won't be here till at least middle of the week at the earliest. So this is the poncho on the needles. Showed this last week. I've knitted a little bit more. I don't know how much I've knitted since last week because I've kind of been a little bit distracted by my new cast on. But I actually, earlier in the year, I ripped this back, and I think I have kind of got past, I did the colour work probably to about here, I think, looking at old photos, and then I did quite a big section, probably at least that in just the dark grey. So I've got back to where I ripped out the colour work and then knitted a bit more. So I'm just going to stick with colour work. The whole thing is going to be colour work. It's going to be a poncho that's sort of about elbow length, I think. Originally I was going to knit it to fit me. It may not fit me, but I'm hoping it'll fit one of my daughters so they can model it. But I've done a little bit more on that. I was finding I was getting a lot of really bad tension headaches. I have a problem with my neck. I was injured in a car accident when I was 14 years old, and then again when I was 30 years old. And if I do anything that involves looking down for too long, it gives me neck pain, which causes headaches. And most knitting I can knit without looking at it all the time, but with colour work I do have to look at it. So I try and sit holding my knitting sort of fairly, not that high, but fairly high, sort of in front of my chest, so that I'm not looking down too much. But I think I was doing too much on this and it was causing me a bit of headaches. Friday and Saturday were really bad, so I decided to cast on for something a bit easier so that I could take a break from this occasionally. So this is in my big project bag, so we'll pop that down there. And then I'll show you what I cast on. So I showed you this ball of yarn last week. You can see it's got considerably smaller. Let's just check how much I've got left. I meant to do that before I came on, so I've just got my small scales out. Let's just check how much we got left of the first ball. Okay, so I got 29 grams left of the first ball, and it's going to be a 2 skein shawl, so I'm using 200 grams in total. So I am, because I tend to allow about 10% safety margins, so I'm looking to use about 180 grams of yarn, and I've used 70 so far. So I'm actually in the middle of a row, which wasn't a very good plan. So I'm just going to quickly finish this row, actually, because it'll be easier to show you if I finish this row. So I'm holding it up high so you can see it, so that I'm not just sitting here kind of knitting with the knitting in my lap and you thinking, what's she doing? Just staring at the camera. So I'm just going to quickly finish this row because it'll be easier to show you how big it's getting. So I knit continental style, for those of you who are wondering. And yes, I do knit quite fast. Normally it's a bit faster than this when I'm not holding it up in front of the camera. Hang on. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the end. Okay, so let me show you. This is what it looks like. So it's got quite big. This bit here is a lifeline that I put in. I did record a little quick video which I posted on my IGTV channel on Instagram on how I insert a lifeline using interchangeable circular needles, and the little tiny hole. Oh, where's the camera there? I don't know, it's not focusing on it. Little tiny hole there, so that you can see it. You can put the yarn in there, and then it's a quick way of inserting a lifeline. I might try and see if I can add it at the end of this video, but we'll see. But yeah, there's, so to here it's just knitted as an asymmetrical triangle, and then there's a short row section kind of, hang on, can I show you this? Hang on, let me see if I can hang it over my face. So from kind of like here to here is a short row section. Oh dear, don't think that's going to work very well. I might have to cut that out. Okay, so anyway, I like this. It's got this cross stitch Let me see if I can show you that. It's got this cross stitch. It'll look better when it's blocked, which is a variation of the Indian cross stitch, which I really, really like. So yeah, I'm really happy with this. Love the colours. I'm actually going to take the lifeline out probably later today because I think I'm happy with the way it's knitting up. I might just put it on a slightly longer needle so I can stretch it out completely at the end and just check the shape to make sure I'm happy with the shape. It's an asymmetrical triangle, but I'm adding short rows to try and make it a little bit more crescenty rather than an asymmetrical triangle. Although most of my asymmetrical triangles end up a bit like a crescent shaped triangle. Okay, and I got some, I'm using my, I'll show you my project bag because this is one of my favorites at the moment. It's from, oh, who made it? Right, there we go. The Fabulous Mr. G. Fabulous Mr. G. I'll see if I can find her website and link it in the description below. And it's made from Harris Tweed. It's a Japanese knot bag. So it's got one short handle and one long handle, and you just put the long handle through the short handle like that, and then you can put it on your wrist. It's quite big. I've actually got a couple of smaller ones which I made myself, which I use in my workshops, but this is a slightly bigger. It's a big enough for a shawl project. And then on here I got some of my pins. So I got YarnAddict. They make these brownie badge pins. So if you're in the UK and you were a brownie, you've probably got some brownie badges, and these are kind of inspired by the brownie badges. So I got Shawl Knitter and Steak Master. And then I got this one, which I got from Happily Ever After, I think it's called. She was opposite me at Woolfest a few weeks ago. So it's a little alpaca that I put on there as well. So that's my favourite project bag at the moment, but it's quite a nice size. Anyway, I'll try and link those below. So that's what's on my needles, 2 projects. I'm not going to show you my socks because I haven't actually done that much on them since last week, so it's pointless. But hopefully I can show you next week that I finished one of them, which would be nice. So let's just talk briefly about what's coming up for August. I got 2 workshops in August. I got one at the Knitting Corner in Sutton Coldfield in Birmingham. Lovely yarn shop. On the 11th of August, I'm teaching top down raglan sweater, where you learn how to knit a raglan sweater from the top down. So you'll learn how to knit in the round using magic loop, how to shape the raglan yoke, how to divide for the sleeves and the body, and finish the sweater. And we also go through how you can work out your own numbers so you can knit your own size, basically design your own size. And I give you a spreadsheet and a worksheet to follow. So if you don't like spreadsheets, you get like a worksheet that you can just go through and fill in the blanks. So that's on the 11th of August at the Knitting Corner in Sutton Coldfield in Birmingham. And then on 17th of August, so a week later, I'm at the Wool Palette in Plymouth. The workshop is actually in Plymstock, in Plymouth in Devon, not that far from where I live. And we're doing the Starlight Beaded Lace Fingerless Mittens. I meant to get them out, but I can't find them at the moment. So I need to find them in the next week, otherwise I have to knit another pair. But they're gorgeous beaded lace fingerless mittens. And I show you how to knit a lace pattern, how to add beads, how to knit in the round using either double pointed needles or magic loop, how to shape the mittens, how to put in an afterthought thumb, and then you get the pattern to take home. So we knit a little excuse me, knit a little mini mitten during the class, and then you get the pattern to take home with you. They just take one skein of sock, less than a skein of sock yarn or 4-ply yarn. So that's what's happening in August. I'm also planning a knit along in my Love of Lace Knitting Facebook group. I don't know which shawl to do yet, whether to just let people do any shawl or whether to do a shawl that I'm hopefully releasing maybe later this week, maybe next week. But we'll see. There's also, August is my birthday month. I'm going to be 50 at the end of August. So in a month and 3 days. So I got some big things planned for August, some exciting giveaways in both my Facebook group, on my Instagram, and on the podcast. So that's quite exciting. and I've also got some discounts and things coming up as well. So big things coming in August, so look out for that. I'll try and get some more details next week about that. Okay, so the main thing I want to talk about that is taking knitting on holiday. So I did actually write a blog post about this a few years ago, but it's about 4 years ago. But I thought rather than just link to the podcast to the blog post, I will actually tell you what I do when I take knitting on holiday. So I will leave some links below. One thing I want to kind of stress is that I'm talking about what's happening in the UK. Now, if you go on the gov.uk website, there is a list of what's allowed, or you're allowed to take in your hand luggage, and knitting needles are listed as allowed. But, and I've never had problems taking my knitting on holiday. I've probably been taking knitting on holiday for the last 10 years or so. First time I did it, I asked to check in. I bought some knitting while we were in Spain. Or was it before? Did I take some knitting with me to Spain? I can't remember. But I actually asked at the airport, I asked to check in, can I take the knitting with me? And I had bamboo needles, and they said yes, that was fine because the bamboo needles. The thing is, it's not actually the airline's decision. It is the airline's decision about whether they allow you to knit on the plane, but it's not their decision about whether they allow you to take knitting needles on the plane with you. That is actually down to security. So I know people who rung up airlines and said, can I take my knitting on the plane with me? And the airline have said no. But they're flying through airports that I've been through with my knitting, and I've never had a problem. So in the UK, on the gov.uk website, which is the official government website, it does say that knitting needles are allowed. You're also allowed to take scissors with the blade that's less than 6 centimeters, so that distance. I don't actually know how long these are. Can't see a tape measure here at the moment, but I think these might be less, but if you measure the blade, that should be less than 6 centimeters, and you're allowed to take those. I take really tiny scissors. I'll show you mine later on. So what I would say, don't ask the airline before you go through security. What I do is I put my knitting in my bag, in my hand luggage as normal, because I like to knit in the departure lounge and I like to knit on the plane if I can stay awake. If you have a late flight, I quite often go to sleep. So what I quite often do is when we used to travel with hold luggage, I would always put a spare set of needles in my hold luggage. So if I got my needles confiscated, I would get to my destination and I'd have a set of needles. These days we mainly fly with hand luggage only. Our two main holiday destinations are Norway and Spain. Now if I go to Norway, I know that if I get my needles confiscated or I finish my knitting or whatever, I can get what I need in Norway, because the town where my parents live have 2 yarn shops. It's a tiny town and they have 2 yarn shops. When we go to Spain, it's a bit more difficult because the only place I know where they sell yarn near where we're staying is in an El Corte Inglés shop, and it's not a great knitting department. They don't have the brands that I like in there. So if you holiday or you're familiar with the area around Alicante, Torrevieja and Murcia, and you know of a good yarn shop, let me know. I know there was one run by a Norwegian woman in Torrevieja, but I believe it's closed down. So if you know anything about yarn shops in Alicante area, Torrevieja area, Murcia city area, let me know, because you never know when you're going to run out of yarn. So what I quite often do is I screw the tips off my circular needles. So I use interchangeable circular needles. I take the tips off, I get a pencil case, I put some pens in, and then I put my needle tips in there. And then when they go through security, it just looks like pens. And I don't think they're that bothered about it. I do quite often leave a set of needles in my knitting as well. It depends on how worried I am about it. It just depends on my mood and how busy I am before we go. But sometimes I'll leave the knitting needles attached to my knitting. Sometimes I'll screw the tips off and put them in the pencil case. But I'll usually put spare needle tips in the pencil case. I tend to use metal needles. My favourite needles are Gu red lace interchangeables. I have some higher interchangeables and regular circular needles as well. I try and take interchangeables on holiday with me, because if I get stopped at security and they want to confiscate my knitting needles, I can screw the tips off and hand them over, and my knitting is still on the cable. I keep giving this advice to people, and it's something I've never done myself, but if you're worried about it, write out a stamped addressed envelope to yourself and then put them in there and post them back to you. Now, you're in security, you've probably been queuing for a while. You probably have to go back out to the main airport to be able to post them, or you could ask the security officer if they would be very kind to post them for you. So I don't know about the practicality of being able to post it back to yourself, but that is something that you can do if you're worried about it, especially if you've got expensive needles like the Chow Goose. But you're probably likely to have fewer problems with wooden or bamboo needles, but I don't like wooden and bamboo needles. I like my Chow Goose, and they're the ones I use. Put spare needles in the whole luggage if you're taking whole luggage, and just take one small project on the plane with you. If you're traveling with hand luggage only, put them in different places. So put a couple of spare set of needle tips in your pencil case, or put a set in your suitcase, put a set in your handbag, split them out. Don't have them all in one bit. So, your trolley case might go through, and then they might search your handbag. Now, I have been searched a number of times at different airports. The last 2 times we flew from Bristol Airport, which is one of our local airports, my whole suitcase was searched. They took everything out, and they weren't bothered about my knitting at all. They weren't really bothered about anything in there anyway. Anything in there, so I don't really know why I got searched. But when I came back from Edinburgh 18 months ago for Edinburgh Yarn Festival last year, I got searched. Now on the way up, I put all because I took some extra needles with me because I was teaching, so I'd asked people to bring needles for the workshop, but I took some spare ones just in case. And I had taken the needle tips off the cables and put them in a pencil case and had the cables separately, all that kind of stuff. Coming back, I didn't bother doing that. I just put them all into like a pouch and stuck them in my suitcase. And the first time I went through security, I got searched, I got stopped, and he said, do you have knitting needles in here? And I said yes. And I went, I'm going to lose my expensive knitting needles. And then he said, okay, can you open your suitcase? And he just had a quick look around. He did like a bomb swab thing. And then he said, that's fine. And I said, I bet you see a lot of knitters this weekend because there's a big knitting festival in Edinburgh. And we had a bit of a chat, and he was very friendly. Our flight actually got cancelled because of snow. So we had to go back, put up in a hotel overnight. So when we went back to the airport the next day, I actually did put my needle tips in a pencil case. So I screwed them off the cables, put the needle tips in the pencil case, and I didn't get stopped that time. Now that might just be a coincidence, I don't know. But I would say my top tips when it comes to security is don't tell them you have knitting with you. Don't say, oh, I got knitting needles, is that okay? Don't get it out. Leave it in your bag, put your bag on the belt, make sure that all your liquids, bottles of water, anything that you're taking, so you can take bottles like this, reusable bottles, but they got to be empty. So I always take this one out and put it in the tray where I put my bag and things, so they know that they can check that it's empty. I make sure I got all my liquids, my hand creams, my lip balms, lipstick, anything like that in the little clear plastic bag, because you want to reduce the risk of them searching you. If you do get challenged by anything, be polite. There's no point arguing with security. You're going to get kicked off the flight, so don't do that. But don't tell them you got knitting either. Just leave it in your bag, and they probably won't even be bothered. I've flown a lot in the last 10 years from airports in the UK. In the UK, I've flown from Exeter, Bristol, Stansted, Gatwick, Edinburgh. I've flown from Alicante, Madrid in Spain, Budapest, Venice, 2 airports in Norway, Oslo, and the old Riga airport, which is closed. And I've never had a problem. So, but obviously, if you're loosely knitting, don't blame me. Okay, so think about your pattern that you're taking with you. If you have a printed pattern, what happens if you lose it? Either print off a spare copy and put it in your suitcase, or put it on your tablet. So if you buy a PDF pattern, upload it to your tablet. If you're taking a tablet or your phone, I have all my documents stored in Dropbox, and I have a Dropbox app on my tablet and on my phone. So if I lose my paper copy, I can access stuff from there. Don't rely on, if you're buying patterns from Ravelry, don't rely on being able to access Ravelry, because then you need internet for that. So do try and make sure that you have it on something that you can read. So if you have it on your tablet, if you're taking a tablet, just upload it to your tablet, and then you've got a copy there. Bring a small notebook for taking notes. If you're making the alterations, if you there's something, anything that you want to make a note of, make it in a notebook rather than on a piece of paper, because you're going to, you could lose a piece of paper probably easier than the notebook. Or if you have a note app on your phone or tablet, write it in there. But I tend to take a notebook with me just in case. Quite often I'll design on the go on holiday as well, so I need a notebook to make notes about that. So I quite often take a notebook about this size. This is actually bought in Spain. I buy some of these every time I go, and they're squared paper with spiral band. So it's not that easy in the UK to get squared paper with spiral band. A lot of squared paper tend to be glued, but most of the notebooks sold in Spain are squared paper. So I always get some of these smaller ones. I got some A5, A4 as well. This is A5, but these are the ones I use the most. So I tend to buy 2 or 3 of those when I first arrive there. Every time we go, I'll buy 2 or 3 to bring home with me. And think about how much knitting do you actually need? How long are you going for? How much knitting are you actually going to do? Do you need 3 sweaters and 2 shawls for a 1-week holiday? Probably not. So I tend to take and also think, will there be any yarn shops at your destination? So if you run out of yarn, can you buy something at your destination? So I tend to take a sock project for knitting on the go, knitting on the beach if you go to Spain. In Norway, I tend to take it to knit when we visit family and socialise and things like that. So like Christmas Eve, when we're all sitting around chatting, I would knit on my socks. When we go to Spain, I tend to knit on my socks on the beach and by the pool. Also in the departure lounge and on the plane and in the car. So when we go to Spain at the end of August, we're actually going by coach to the airport. So if I don't fall asleep on the coach, which I do a lot, I'll probably knit most of the way there, and it's about 3 hours. And then I'll probably knit in the departure lounge, and then I'll probably knit on the plane. So I might actually finish most of one sock before I even get to Spain. So I'll probably take 2 skeins of sock yarn with me. When we went to Norway Christmas, I only took 1 because there are 2 yarn shops in my parents' town, so I knew I could buy sock yarn while I was there. And I actually bought 3 skeins, I think, while I was there, and I finished 2.5 pairs of socks while I was in Norway last Christmas. I also tend to take a lace project, so I don't tend to take big bulky projects like sweaters, because most of the time we travel with hand luggage only, so I don't have room. I'd rather bring clothes than a big knitting project. So what I tend to do is take a lace weight project in lace weight yarn. So if you got 100 gram skein of lace weight, that could be like 800 to 1200 meters. That's a lot of knitting. For most people, that'd be plenty for a 2-week holiday. I used to take like a easier project with sock yarn or 4-ply yarn, then a more complex project, but it's just too much and I wasn't finishing it. So this time I'm probably going to take a skein of lace ball from Shopball. I do have some skeins of 4-ply and sock yarn that I am planning to knit some projects, some designs out of. I got 3 lots that I can think of off the top of my head. They're all 2 skein projects, but they're sock yarn or 4-ply yarn. So I don't know whether to take those or not. I haven't quite decided yet because they're a little bit bulkier. But that'll probably be enough. But I'm going to try and just take 2 pairs of socks and 1 lace project, 1 big lace project. Will there be yarn shops at the destination? If there is, then you don't need to take too much, because you can always go and buy something if you need to. And then you can buy something and not feel guilty about it because you've run out of your knitting. So my favourite holiday projects are socks for the beach, travel, airport, plane, that kind of thing. And then a lace weight project for knitting in the evenings. When we go to Spain, I sit on the balcony and knit a lot. So a lace project that I can really kind of concentrate on is quite nice. But, think about your holiday. If you're on an adventure holiday where you're going to be moving around a lot and traveling a lot, you probably just want something easy. Think about notions that you're going to need. So I take a little notions case like this. This is from the Sexy Knitter on Etsy. I don't know whether she still sells these, but I'll try and link to her if I can. She's called the Sexy Knitter. According to this tape measure, it's the sexyknitter.etsy.com, but I'll try and link her website below. So this one comes, it's a bit difficult to show you with that. tipping it over. It came with a tape measure, a little mini crochet hook, which is double-ended. So you've got a smaller hook on one side and a slightly bigger hook on the other side. Then it came with some stitch markers that she's made, which I've taken out. So what I keep in here is I keep a tape measure, I keep the crochet hook because that's perfect for picking up stitches. I got a tiny hook and a slightly bigger hook, so if I drop stitches, that's really good for fixing drop stitches. And then I keep a tiny pair of scissors. So the blades on these are really tiny, so I have no problems about these getting through security. And then I keep 2 end stoppers for my interchangeable ChowGoo needles. So if I do have to take the needles off for any reason, I can screw these on instead. And then I take a couple, hang on if I can pick this up, I'm trying not to tip all this all over my floor. 2 of these are the pins that come with your ChowGoo interchangeable needles to tighten them. I think Nipro do the same ones or slightly different ones, but these are the ones that the ChowGoo give you. It's basically a T-pin, but I use those to tighten my interchangeable needles, so I keep a couple of those in here. And then I keep a sewing needle. I usually keep 2 in here, but I lost one of my ones that I keep in my main notions kit, so I took one out of here to put in there. But it's got like a big, you see that? Like a big loop, so it's really easy to thread it, and it's quite pointy. So if I need to weave in ends or anything like that, I got that in there. And then I've got a selection of stitch markers. So my favorite stitch markers are this type, so they're solid metal ones with a bead on it. I have them from, most of mine are from, I probably got like 10 in here. And then also got some solid plastic ones. Most of my stitch markers are from Fripperies and Bibelot, so I'll try and remember to link her below as well. And then I also, and I haven't got very many of these, so I need to put some more in. I also keep some of these in here, the sort of padlock stitch markers. I've only got 1 in here at the moment, so I need to put some, no, I've got 2 in here, so I'll need to put some more of those in. But this case normally stays in my handbag, and I just take that out and take it on holiday with me. So that's all I take when it comes to notions. My regular notions case is actually not that much bigger than this, probably about twice the thickness of this and a little width, but square. So that's what I normally take with me on holiday. I keep this in my handbag normally, and then I just take it with me on holiday. So that was my top tips for traveling with your knitting. I'll try and link to all those things if I remember below. Right, so last thing I want to talk about is my new shawl that I released this week and my giveaway. So this shawl is Glindaborn. I released this last week. It was originally published in the Knitter magazine. This is how I normally wear it. Let's see if I can stand up so you can see it like that. This is how I would normally wear it in the winter. It's quite hot today, so I'm going to take it off. But it's knitted in John Arbon Devonia, and I released the pattern last week. There is a discount code for it, which is valid until the end of the month, which is Glindaborn 30. That's Glindaborn with capital letters 30. And that's valid 30% off the pattern until the end of the month. I'll leave the details for that below. And then giveaway. So I'm going to give away a copy of my Easy Lace Knits book. So this book came out exactly a year ago, almost exactly a year ago. It's my second book. Love this project on the cover. It's got 20 projects in it. I'll just show you some of the projects. It's got shawls, scarves, a blanket, cowl, hand warmers here, another pair of hand warmers, poncho, sweater, more shawls, and another sort of little t-shirty garment thing here. Some of them have got beads, but most of them don't. At the beginning of the book, it's got tips on helping to make your lace knitting easier. Think about yarn substitution, about swatching and why you want to swatch. Think about how to help you choose the right pattern and how to read the pattern and that kind of thing. And then it's got loads of tips. It's got things about inserting lifelines, using stitch markers, reading your knitting, fixing mistakes, reading charts, how to work various shawl shapes. So I go through how to work a triangle and a teardrop shawl, a half hexagon shawl and a hybrid shawl. And then it's got some technique stuff, so like various lace stitches, how to work different increases used in the book, how to do the cable cast on, how to do various decreases. I'm just flicking through the book to remind myself. Couple of different long tail cast on, binding off or cast off, stretchy cast off, 3 needle cast off, sewn cast off, how to some finishing technique stuff like that, picking up stitches and blocking and adding beads to your knitting. So it's a really nice book. It's got charts and written instructions, and the charts are really big, and they got the chart key on the same page as the charts, but it's got written instructions as well. So it's a really nice book. It's got 20 lace patterns, and I wrote this book to make lace knitting accessible to everyone. So whatever your level, you can knit projects in this book. So it starts with level 1, which is really easy, and then it gets gradually more difficult. So the projects at the beginning of the book are the easier ones, and then towards the end of the book are the more difficult ones. So you can choose whatever you want, really. If you want to do an easy one, choose from the beginning. If you want to do a more difficult one, choose from the end of the book. So the most difficult project, just to give you an idea, that one is a little bit more difficult. That's a beautiful one. That's knitted in Fibre Spades Gleam lace, I think. This shawl is a little bit more difficult because it's all over lace. This one is probably the most difficult one, I think. That's a half circle lace shawl. Yeah. So, but you know, whatever your level, you can find something that you like in here. So I'm going to give away 1 copy of this book to somebody who comments on this podcast before the end of the month. So I'm probably going to do this give you 2 chances to win. So this week's episode and next week's episode, if I can get it up before the end of the month. But if you comment on this week's episode, I'll do the draw before the end of the month. And you'll get a copy of this book. If you already own this book, then you can have a copy of my first book, Beaded Lace Knitting, instead. So, or if you want this one instead, you can choose. So just leave a comment for this post. You can comment about anything. So what you think about the podcast, what you'd like me to talk about, or if you don't really know what to comment, but you want to leave a comment, just tell me what you like knitting. So what's your favourite thing to knit, especially when going on holiday? What's your favourite type of knitting to take on holiday? So leave a comment. Any comment counts, as long as it's not a nasty comment. I will exclude any nasty comments. And then I'll do the draw before the end of the month. So leave a comment before the end of July and I will do the draw and let you know first week in August. Okay, so thank you very much for watching. I enjoyed doing this podcast. I will leave all the links to everything I've talked about below. And if you have any questions or you want to get in touch, just leave me a comment or a message below. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back next week.